Welcome back to the Midnight Mind. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video. It really helps us to keep the channel going. It's midnight. It's time to enter the mind of Schopenhauer. You've felt it before. You're in the middle of a conversation, surrounded by voices, but somehow you feel miles away. People are talking about gossip, trivialities, the endless cycle of news headlines, and you try once again to add something deeper, to suggest a thought, an observation, an idea that matters. And what do you receive? Blank stares. A quick change of subject, maybe even the quiet sense that you've just made things uncomfortable. And so you retreat, you stay silent, you tell yourself, maybe it's better this way. If this has happened to you, you are not alone. But it doesn't make it easier, because what you're feeling is not just loneliness. It is the disconnection that comes when you see the world differently. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutal and uncompromising philosophers of the 19th century, believed this experience was inevitable. He argued that intelligence does not unite, it isolates. The deeper your perception of the world, the fewer people you will find who can meet you there. This is not simply about knowledge. You can teach someone facts. You can share information. But wisdom, the ability to see patterns, contradictions, illusions, that cannot be transferred so easily. And Schopenhauer believed that most people just don't want it. They want comfort. Society functions on illusion, on the belief that happiness comes through consumption, that success is a simple path to follow, that common sense is always correct. When you question these things, you're not just asking questions, you're disturbing the peace. You're shaking the foundation on which most people stand. And so society subtly pushes you away. Not always with open hostility, but with small rejections, the blank stare, the awkward silence, the label negative, difficult, overthinking. It's a slow erosion of belonging. This is why the intelligent often feel like outsiders. The world is not built for thinkers, it is built for conformists. And when you see through the illusions, you will always feel a step apart. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize this. He didn't call it a blessing. He called it what it felt like, a curse. The curse of intelligence is that once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot return to ignorance. Once you've glimpsed the machinery behind the spectacle, the play on stage no longer entertains you. He compared society to a theatre. Most are content to watch the actors, to believe the script, to lose themselves in the story. But the thinker slips behind the curtain, sees the wires and the pulleys, and suddenly the magic is gone. And so the thinker withdraws, not because he despises others, but because the effort to stay engaged feels unbearable. To speak your mind is to risk rejection. To hold it back is to betray yourself. And after enough of these moments, solitude begins to feel easier than conversation. At first, solitude feels like a refuge. It's addictive. A sanctuary where you no longer need to censor yourself, where you can think freely without the burden of fitting in. You begin to relish it, even to prefer it. But solitude has a cost, because human beings are social. Even the deepest thinker longs to be understood, if only by one other soul. Even the most independent mind craves the spark of dialogue, the relief of recognition. And this is where the paradox lies. Isolation protects you from the noise, but it can also trap you in your own echo chamber. You become both prisoner and guard. Circling your own thoughts without challenge, even intelligence can wither. This is why Schopenhauer's insights feel so heavy. To be intelligent, to see clearly, is to stand at a distance from the crowd. But distance over time becomes loneliness, and loneliness, if left unchecked, can hollow you out. So where does that leave us? Is intelligence only a curse? A ticket to a life of isolation and melancholy? Not entirely, because while Schopenhauer saw the darkness clearly, there is also another truth. Solitude can be a teacher. Isolation can refine you. Time alone can sharpen your perception, deepen your understanding, and strengthen your independence. The key is balance. To know when solitude is medicine and when it is poison. To learn how to stand apart without cutting yourself off completely. To use isolation as a tool, not as a sentence. Because while it's true that the intelligent often walk alone, it is also true that there are others, scattered, rare, hidden, who walk the same path. And when you find them, the connection is worth more than 100 superficial bonds. This is the starting point. Recognizing that your isolation is not a flaw, not a failure, but a reflection of how you see the world. And from here, the challenge is not to escape solitude, but to learn how to live with it, productively, meaningfully, without letting it consume you. Schopenhauer believed that human society is built on distraction. Most people are content to live on the surface, to fill their days with entertainment, routines, and small talk. These things are not meaningless, but they serve a purpose. They protect us from confronting deeper questions. What does life mean? Why is there suffering? What happens when it all ends? For the average person, these questions are avoided, pushed aside in favour of comfort. But for the thinker, they cannot be ignored. History shows us that those who pursue truth have often been rejected by the crowd. Socrates was condemned by his city for corrupting the youth. Galileo was punished for suggesting that the earth moved around the sun. Even in art, writers and painters whose genius is celebrated today were dismissed, ridiculed, or left in poverty during their lifetimes. The pattern is the same. To see clearly is to live apart. Schopenhauer himself was no stranger to this. His ideas about the futility of human striving and the illusion of happiness made him unpopular while he was alive. He was overshadowed by other thinkers, dismissed as pessimistic, and only later did people begin to appreciate the depth of his insights. He lived much of his life in solitude, convinced that most of society was incapable of understanding the truths he had uncovered. But this isolation is not always forced. Sometimes it is chosen. The intelligent person learns quickly that the effort of explaining themselves, of trying to bridge the gap, often ends in disappointment, and so they retreat. Not out of arrogance, but out of exhaustion. They learn to conserve their energy. They learn that solitude offers something society does not: space to think, to create, to grow without constant interruption. Yet solitude carries its own risks. Without connection, the mind can become trapped in its own loops. Thoughts circle endlessly, unanswered and unchallenged. What begins as clarity can slip into cynicism. What begins as independence can turn into bitterness. This is why balance matters. Solitude may sharpen the mind, but connection nourishes the soul. Think about it. Even Schopenhauer, who praised solitude, read deeply, studied widely, and drew on the ideas of others. His work was born in quiet, yes, but it was shaped by dialogue with the great thinkers before him. Even in isolation, he was part of a conversation across centuries. This reminds us that complete withdrawal is not the goal. The goal is selective connection, choosing carefully who you allow into your circle and when. There is another danger too, mistaking isolation for superiority. Some intelligent people, aware that they see more clearly than those around them, begin to feel contempt. They convince themselves that they are above everyone else, that society is nothing but fools and sheep. But this attitude poisons the mind. It cuts you off, not only from others, but from your own humanity. Intelligence does not make you more valuable to others, it simply gives you a different perspective. And if you lose compassion, you lose part of what makes wisdom possible. So how should we live with this paradox? Schopenhauer gives us one half of the answer. Accept that intelligence will always bring a measure of isolation. Don't expect the crowd to understand you. Don't waste your energy trying to fit in where you do not belong. But we must also add the other half. Don't let isolation harden you into stone. Seek connection where it's genuine. Cherish those rare individuals who do understand. And when you find them, don't let them go lightly. There is beauty in these rare bonds. One deep conversation can be worth more than 100 shallow ones. One person who truly sees you can outweigh the indifference of the crowd. The intelligent may never have many friends, but the few they do have can be profound, lasting, transformative. This is the hope hidden inside Schopenhauer's dark message. Yes, intelligence often leads to isolation. Yes, solitude can feel like a curse. But solitude can also be a forge. It can shape you into someone who knows their own mind, who is not swayed by the crowd, and can walk alone without fear. And when that strength is combined with genuine connection, when solitude and society are held in balance, it creates a life that is both deep and human. Your isolation is not proof of failure, it is proof that you see differently. The challenge is to use it wisely. Retreat when you must, to protect your clarity, but return when you can, to share your light with those able to receive it. In this balance lies the path of the thinker, alone but not cut off, different but not disdainful, separate but still human. So, how do you live with this in reality? How do you take Schopenhauer's hard truth that intelligence often leads to isolation and then shape that into something you can live with, maybe even draw strength from? The first step is acceptance. Stop trying to fight what is inevitable. If you're someone who sees deeply, who questions assumptions, who refuses to live on the surface, then you will always feel a little apart. Don't waste your energy trying to erase this difference. Don't exhaust yourself pretending to be someone you're not. Accept that solitude will be part of your life. Once you accept it, the pain softens. What felt like rejection begins to feel like choice. The second step is to use your solitude. Solitude can destroy you, but it can also transform you. It depends on how you approach it. If you spend your time in isolation, dwelling on rejection, your loneliness will harden into bitterness. But if you spend it cultivating your mind, creating, reading, reflecting, your solitude becomes sacred. History is filled with thinkers, artists, and visionaries who used solitude as a forge. They withdrew, not because they hated people, but because they needed space to see clearly, to bring into being what could not be born in the noise of the crowd. But you must be careful not to let solitude swallow you. You need balance, because even the most intelligent mind requires nourishment from connection. Even if others can't always meet you at your depth, the simple presence of companionship, the warmth of friendship, the comfort of being known in small ways keeps you human. Total isolation starves the spirit. Selective connection feeds it. This is where Schopenhauer's darkness needs a counterweight. Yes, intelligence isolates, we know that. But it doesn't mean you must live cut off. It means you must choose carefully. You don't need a crowd. You don't need endless company. What you do need is a few genuine connections. People with whom you can share a part of your truth. Even if they don't understand everything, even if they don't see as deeply, their presence is enough to remind you that you are not entirely alone in this world. And when you can't find these people, turn to the great minds of the past. Books are conversations across centuries. In every library sits the company of those who, like you, once felt isolated, once felt misunderstood, once walked alone. They left behind their thoughts so that you, sitting in your solitude, would have companions. Schopenhauer himself would no doubt remind us that if you cannot find equals in your time, you can find them in history. There is also another lesson here. Learn to find value in simple, ordinary contact. Not every conversation needs to be profound. Not every friendship must revolve around philosophy or art or truth. Sometimes companionship is enough. A shared meal, a moment of laughter, a walk with someone you trust. These things may seem small, but they are vital. They remind you that intelligence may isolate you intellectually, but you are still human, still part of the world, still bound to others by the same need for warmth and care. So, the path forward is not to reject society completely, nor to drown yourself in it. It is to walk the line between, to retreat when the noise overwhelms you, to return when you need connection, to guard your solitude fiercely, but also to remain open to those rare and genuine bonds when they appear. If you can do this, then your isolation no longer feels like a curse. it becomes a source of strength, because solitude will give you clarity, independence, and resilience. And selective connection will give you balance, grounding, and humanity. Together, they allow you to live fully, apart, yet still connected. And perhaps most importantly, know that you are not alone in your aloneness. The very fact that you feel different, that you sometimes struggle to connect, places you among a long line of thinkers, artists, seekers who felt the same. What you carry is heavy, but it is also ancient. Others have carried it too, and their lives remind us that isolation doesn't have to end in despair. It can end in greatness, in depth, in wisdom. So, when you find yourself walking alone, don't see it as failure. See it as part of the path. Accept the solitude, but don't let it consume you. Use it to think, to grow, to create. Protect it when the crowd demands your conformity, but also step out of it when life offers you genuine connection. Hold both sides of the paradox. In that balance lies your strength. Schopenhauer was right. Intelligence often leads to isolation. But the story doesn't end there. Because while isolation may be the beginning, what you make of it is up to you. It can be a prison, or it can be a sanctuary. It can break you, or it can build you. The choice is yours. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.